Hey everyone, and welcome back to That Random Geeky Guy. I'm Ryan, and we're back with part 2 of the White Widow builds. If you haven't checked out part 1, the link is in the video description. I highly recommend that you do that before getting into this video. But essentially, this is an order from somebody who's come to me, and they placed an order for a PC where they wanted to get kind of a primarily white theme, a couple of touches of black here and there, and some RGB and a load of RGB to make sure we get that maximum FPS. In the first build, we started the process with the motherboards. The motherboard in this, by the way, is a B550. It's an Asus Prime A, and sat on it is a Ryzen 7 5800X, which is pretty cool. And then we've also popped in, since the last video, the GPU has arrived and gone in. So you can see that we've got a white GPU to go with the build. That was a challenge. But it's an RTX 3070. Here's the box for it here. So it's the Gigabyte Vision version. If you haven't seen this GPU, it looks stunning. If you've got a white build, this is a must. This has to happen. So yes, that's in. I think it's looking really good. But left to do, I mean, we've got the boot drive in, which is a WD black. We've got the games library drive in, which is a 1 terabyte WD SSD. The power supply's in, which is a Seasonic power supply, 80 plus gold. That's all done. Cable management started. But we do need to finish off by getting the cooler in, as well as finishing off all the rest of the cable ties and all that sort of stuff. And then getting it booted up and getting it working, so you guys can see in all its glory. Now, this is kind of part 2, but it's actually kind of part 2.5. I actually had already started filming this, but with a different cooler. So originally, I've got loads of boxes off down here. Originally, we were going for, there's a bit of stuff up on top of it, but we were originally going for an NZXT Kraken Z63 because of the screen. The challenge is that actually turns out it's got quite a deep radiator, and it wouldn't fit in the top of the case. It interfered with the RAM, with the fans on as well. So unfortunately, we had to go back to the drawing board. So we've switched over to this white, because obviously the NZXT Z63 is black, and we were going to have to get a tube kit from Cable Mod to make that white, to get it to fit better. But we've gone with this one from Corsair, which is a H100i, which is the Platinum SE, so it's white and it's got all the RGB and all those sort of bits and pieces. And it should fit, because the case we're using is a Corsair 4000X, and the RAM we're using is a Corsair Vengeance Pro. So you'd have thought that all of this should fit together pretty well. So fingers crossed that part 2.5, which this is now the new recording, this all works well. Anyway, let's kind of get into it. There is one controversial subject. So when we talk about the cooler, so let's look at that. We have decided, now that you guys are probably going to have a bit of backlash for this, but we have decided to not use the thermal paste that comes on the cooler. I know, okay, but the point being is we want to make sure that we do everything we can to maximize the system within budget. So we're actually going to be using some Thermal Grizzly, which I think is the best one that you can get. Again, you can air your thoughts and feelings on that in the comment section below. But essentially, we are going to be taking the stock paste off and replacing it with Thermal Grizzly. Anyway, let's get this opened up. Now, one of the great things about fitting, well, in my opinion, one of the great things about fitting a cooler to an AM4 socket from AMD is that the mounts tend to be really simple, especially in comparison to some of the Intel mounts that you can get. What I mean is a majority of the motherboards have either a fixed or a removable backplate integrated with the motherboards. And actually, if my knowledge is right, this cooler actually connects to the stock AMD cooler brackets. You don't even have to remove it, but even if you had to and use an Acertech mount, whatever it might be, the plate's there for you to screw right into. So they tend to be a lot easier to actually mount. Now I can see straight away this rad is definitely thinner than the rad that was in that Z63, so that gives me hope, and fingers crossed we get a decent fit. Now in terms of orientation, we're going to go with rad at the top, with the fans underneath it, and for obvious reasons, that's for aesthetics. It's because we want it to look a certain way, and I believe that's the way that we're going to achieve that. I really love on this that with the white one, it is completely white, even the rads. that's pretty impressive. So, okay, first things first, we need to get the fans mounted before we try and get it in the top, and then hopefully we have success and it actually fits. So I'll be back with you guys in just a few minutes. Let me get these fans fitted. Okay guys, there we go. The cooler is now in the top of the case. Don't worry, the traumatic bit of using the IPA fluid and removing the thermal paste has been done off camera. I don't want to scare too many people. But look, you know, we're using Thermal Grizzly. Look, what's your take on that? Do you think it's worth it? Do you think it's a waste of time? I don't mind doing it. I'm a great believer that Thermal Grizzly is the best paste you can get, so why the hell not use it? So anyway, comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Next up, we've actually got to fit the pump and the heatsink onto the actual processor. So that's what we're going to do next. It's all set up, ready for the AMD socket. Beyond these two little clips here, let me bring them up close. These clip onto, all focus in, there we go. So these clip onto the existing AMD mount. It's what I actually quite like about this setup. It makes the process exceptionally simple. So what I'm going to do is, before I kind of get the thermal paste in there and, you know, increase the odds of making a mess in what is a beautifully clean build, I'm just going to get these on now. So basically you just loosely screw these on so they're staying in place, because ultimately you're going to take them to their full tension once it's actually on and clipped over the mounting mechanism that is already on the motherboard. So cool, that's those going. We're good there. All the cables are routed through from the actual fans. We actually have a number of cables that we need to route through from the pump. And they've kind of changed their design since the original H100s, in that the actual setup in terms of the RGB on top of the pump also controls the RGB on the light loop fans on the top. Prior to this, you would have to use a lighting node or something like that. So that's cool. Let's just get into my little PC kit here. I'll go through this one day. I think everybody who's into PC building and so on and so forth should have a little kit. So when you're doing some builds, you've got all your bits and pieces that you need. So there you go. There's Cryonaut Ultra High Performance Thermal Grease from Thermal Grizzly. So that's what we use. It's what's in my build. Moment of truth to get this on. So what method do you guys go for? So with this particular paste, it actually includes an applicator, which I don't always use, I will be honest. So the applicator is essentially like a little spatula, so you can just kind of spread things out. But I think some people just go for kind of the pea design slash the grain of rice, and then say others do use the spatula to spread it out. What should we do? Let's go with a spread. Let's spread this out. So I'm not going to bore you with the actual application. I'm sure you guys have seen thermal paste put on enough, but I'll keep talking to you guys while it's being done. This tube's actually getting a little bit low, so I may have to pick up some more of this. Okay. There we go. So what I've done is I've just run a kind of rice-sized piece across the middle, as if I was just going to then use the pump itself to spread it out, which is perfectly fine. But I am going to use the spreader just so I can give myself peace of mind. This isn't my computer. It's going to somebody else. So I can give myself peace of mind that there is a decent covering of thermal paste all across the heat spreader. This is a very high power processor, and dealing with temperatures is exceptionally important. You ignore that, you aren't going to get your maximum performance. Okay. There we go. And I need just a tiny bit more to get the application that I want. Which is ideal, because that's the last of the tube. And there wouldn't have been enough for a second application. So we can use what's left up, and that one is finished with. So there we go. Thermal paste is applied. Next up, we need to actually fix on the pump. Now, it can be a little bit fiddly, because obviously you've already got the rad in the top, and you've got to feed through these cables. So I'll get this all fitted on, and then I will be back with you guys. Okay, so we have the cooler now completely in. We've run the cables and cable managed them down the back, as well as the USB header, which obviously works then with the IQ software. So that's all in. It was actually fairly easier than I thought it was going to be. It wasn't too fiddly, which is good. Next up, we've got to power this beast of a GPU. So we're going to be doing that like we did with the 24-pin connector that you can see here. We've actually got some sleeved cables. Before they actually go in, this is an extension set as opposed to specifically for the power supply. Before they go in, we've got to put on these cable combs, which are small little plastic clips that go along the length of the cable to train the cable into kind of alignment and being parallel and looking kind of neat. Now, these are quite small and fiddly, so again, I'm going to bring these right up to the camera so you can see them. So they're quite small and fiddly, but it's quite important that you do put them on. And the other thing just kind of to factor in, as part of the process of putting these in, these particular cables are slightly higher quality ones. What I mean by that is that they essentially tend to do two different variants in terms of wrapping the cables. One of the ones I'm going to talk to you, by the way, while I'm putting this on. So one of the things that they will use is like a plastic material, which tends to be on the cheaper ones. And then on the more expensive ones, you get what is essentially paracord. So these ones have paracord. So they do look a bit nicer. The problem is that the plastic ones, you can train them better. So what I mean by train, so people use that terminology of training the cables, is essentially to get them to sit the way you want them to sit, because they've kind of got a little bit of memory to them. When you bend them in a certain direction, they kind of stay there. So it means that you can kind of achieve a look a lot easier. With these, you kind of sacrifice that by the fact that you have paracord. So paracord looks better as a casing, in my opinion, but they are more difficult to train and they are more difficult to put into place. Now, what you tend to find with this, so this particular GPU takes one 8-pin and one 6-pin connector. So I'm just doing the 6-pin at the moment, but they are double layered. So it's not like 8 pins in a row. So it's 4 and 4, or in a 6-pin, 3 and 3. So these, as I showed you when I brought this up close to the camera, these cable clips are kind of too deep, if that makes sense. Now, we have gone with the stock cable clips that came with this, which is the black ones, because it kind of fits quite well with the black and white kind of theme in terms of fixed colors. But you can buy a whole array of different cable clips. So if you do have a design idea that you have, and you'd like the cable clips to play part of that, you can actually buy all different colors. You can also buy different materials. So these ones are plastic, but you can also get metal ones. Obviously, they're a bit more expensive. And then if you really want to kind of push the boat out, you can also get ones that are translucent and have RGB LEDs in them. So if you use that with a white cable kit like this, you can light your cables up. It's I know obviously there are companies like offer like, I guess, cable kits where they've got then like a fiber optic cable going over the top of them to disperse light, and then they send light through them. That's a slightly more expensive option. The cable clip option gives you that kind of customization at a cheaper cost. But with this one, like I say, we've just gone for the black ones. It fits with the theme. And the other important thing is that between all of the cables, think about the orientation of which the cable plugs in, and make sure you put these combs in from the right side so that you either end up with the tops of it, as in where there's the split between them, or the back of it. So it's uniform throughout, and obviously decide which way around that you want those to be. Let me just get these last two clips on, and then we'll be feeding them through. Like I said, this is an extension kit. This is something that kind of anybody can do, regardless of if you've got a modular, semi-modular, or fixed cable power supply, because it just extends off that existing power supply. It also means, like versus module, that sometimes you have to get brand specific cables, whereas with this you don't. The only thing to remember is that if you do go really, really cheap, you might find that actually it creates a bit too much impedance and can actually cause erratic behavior from whatever it is they're powering. So don't massively cheap out, but they don't have to be overly expensive. You can normally pick up a fairly decent cable kit for around 20 to £25. If you go for something more kind of higher end like this, you could be talking 30 to 40. And then if you go fully custom, you're talking in excess of £100 if you're having them made to standard. As with part one of this video, the parts that we've used in this build, they are all listed below. So if you want to support the channel, you can click on one of those links. They are Amazon affiliate links, so we do get a little bit of a kickback. But yeah, if you're planning a build like this, it would help us out. Anyway, that's these two cables completed. So I'm going to come back around the front here, and we're going to plug these in straight into the GPU, because that's the source that I would like to start from rather than the power supply end. This means that the back end of these cables now, I'm going to then feed through the bottom of the case, and then out the back of the case, we will then be plugging in the power supply cables that come off the power supply, thus extending them into these cables that you see here. Now this is a time to utilize those cable clips that you've just put on to try and keep the theme running all the way down the cable, and just for it to look as neat as possible. Something else that you'll tend to find using paracord cables versus the plastic ones is the gap between the cables tends to be a little bit larger. Basically, the cables aren't quite as thick of a gauge once you add in the sleeving. So just bear that in mind when you're making your design decisions. But there we go. So that's those in. I'm going to plug these in the back and finish off the cable management. Now, if you've got any questions at all about using sleeved cables, please stick those questions below. As ever, I will always do my very best to answer any questions that arise. Let me get these finished off and all cable managed, and then we'll be back with you. So now I'm going to tempt fate and say that this is done. Okay, so everything's all in. We have very minimal bulge on the back with how much RGB's in here. We've got 2 RGB controllers, loads of cables. You know Corsair are famous for it. And yeah, it's gone in really clean, really smooth. I'm going to pop the dust filter back on top. I won't be putting the tempered glass panel on. I think we're massively tempting fate if we do that. So there you go. That's everything in. There's the finished look. Don't worry, there'll be some glam footage a little bit later on. But that is the finished look at the moment. What I'm going to do now is the really boring bits. So I'm going to go and install Windows on this, get it all booted up, set up the color profile, so on and so forth. And then I'll come back to you guys to show you what it looks like. So wish me luck, and I will see you shortly. And there we go. It's finally finished. Everything is all set up. It is working, and I think it looks absolutely gorgeous. What an unbelievably clean and stunning build. I'm not going to stand in front of you and say that it was easy. The case is good. It's a good case to build in. But with how much RGB is in this, how many fans there are, so on and so forth, this thing is maxed out. So it's been a real challenge in terms of cable managing and make sure that we can get everything where we want it to be and to the standards that I would expect. Because ultimately, if I'm going to build a computer for someone else, I'm not just going to build it how I would build it for myself. I'm going to build it even better, because ultimately this is their pride and joy, and I need to make sure that I manage and get to their expectations as best as possible, and I think it looks absolutely stunning. Right, bit of a recap on spec. Like I say, we're running a Ryzen 7 5800X, 32 gig of RAM, over 4 8 gig DIMMs at 3600 megahertz. We were lucky to get a Gigabyte Vision OC 3070 in that white design. Really fits in with the build very well. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6 light loop fans from Corsair. Again, in that white design. We've got sat in the top here a 240mm AIO, which is the H100i, which again, 2 of those light loop fans are on. That's all fed into the Asus Prime B550 motherboard, which has been an absolute dream to work with. Sat on that, we've got the WD Black boot drive, the NVMe one, and then we've got a 1 terabyte SSD as a games library sat in the back here. It's all being powered by an 80 plus gold Seasonic power supply, and we've also got that cable extension kit on there with these absolutely awesome white cables that you can see. Guys, I'm going to stop jabbering on. Let's get some close-up footage. do you think? I really encourage your feedback. Comments in the section below. Like I said, I've poured a lot of effort and energy into this, and I really want people to say what they think. Do they like the design? You know, is it your sort of thing? I get it. You know, pure white builds, they can be a little bit Marmite. Not everybody loves them, but I think it looks epic. It's very different to what I'm used to because I don't have that. I have a large fractal design, black case and all black components. And yeah, this is certainly a step in a very different direction for me. So look guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Please head on over to that randomgeekyguy.com. Pick up one of these Stealth Traces t-shirts. It massively supports the channel. For those who haven't seen the design, we've got the Random Geeky Guy logo in the middle, and then we've got motherboard traces all over the t-shirt, but it's a stealth one. I think it looks great. Check it out. Other than that, like I said, all of the components that's been used in this two-part video are down in the video description below. They are Amazon affiliate links, so they will give a kickback to the channel. So if you're planning to pick up any of this stuff, do us a favor, head on over, use those links. It makes a real difference. Other than that, thank you for sitting through these two videos. I hope you've enjoyed it. And like I say, if you like it, give it a thumbs up. If not, thumbs down. A bit of free support you can give us is smashing that subscribe button. Hit the bell so you're notified for the next videos. And again, guys, thank you very much for tuning in and take care.